first beside the river. Wash the journey from your hand. Feel the comfort flow inside you. Come this far, you understand. Fear's not allowed, where dreams can be lost or found.
Productive.
Yeah, why didn't you leave your car in there?
Hello. Welcome to Healing Outside the Box. This is our 30th show. My name is Rosemary Lachance, and I'm a Reiki energy healer.
And my name's Traci Crampton, and I'm an energy practitioner.
We are the producers and the hosts for this thought-provoking series on alternative healing and spirituality. Our show informs you of the many options in healthcare available to you so that you can make informed decisions on harmonizing your body, mind, and spirit. This is our first show of the new year, and we are thrilled with the interesting lineup of guests we will be having. This year, we hope to continue to bring our viewers more exciting perspectives on healing their bodies, minds, and spirits, as well as our environment, our communities, and our pets and wildlife. We have decided to begin each show from here on addressing some of the questions asked by our viewers before introducing our guests. So our first audience question that we received is, what do we mean by spiritual?
Yes.
Okay.
This is a question both asked a lot regarding our show, as well as Rosemary and I get this question a lot in concern to our practice in alternative healing. And I think some people steer away from alternative healing because of their misconceptions about the use of the word spiritual. And we really want to clarify that for our viewers and also for anybody who's interested in looking into alternative healing methods. That spiritual is much broader in a sense than what we would say religion would be.
Religion, right.
And so we wanted to kind of distinguish the differences between that a little bit so that our viewers, feel more comfortable. I think that over time and through the centuries, people start to feel that, the structure of some religions has left maybe a bad taste in their mouth. I'm not saying, that it's all bad. I mean, there's a place for everything. But the term spirituality has kind of been lumped in with the term religion. And we wanted to distinguish that out a little bit more so that you have a clearer understanding.
Right. Spirituality, how can I say,
It's broader.
broad. It's everything. It's not just one religion, one belief, or anything like that. It's just being spiritual. It's just believing in a God or a higher power of some kind.
Or even just
believing
the
in
existence of energy that feeds our life force. And however you want to label that.
Yeah, that's right. Whatever you want to call it. They call it God, Yeehaw.
Yahweh.
Yahweh.
Yes. Hopefully it is for most people.
Yahweh.
Goddess.
Yeah,
yes.
Goddess.
Divine.
Yeah. Whatever.
And then we can also look at it from, a scientific perspective too. What's in the air we breathe, what does that consist of? What's between the matter that you and I are. So that energy that exists between us.
Yeah, scientists
and within us.
Scientists have already proved that there is an energy out there, and we absorb that energy. And that's what it's all about. That's what we do when we do our Reiki. We channel this energy to you.
Right.
We're not healers.
And we're not
a
trying to talk anybody into some cult or some type of religion.
No.
We're extremely open-minded. All walks of life, all beliefs are welcome.
That's right.
And we don't want to steer anybody away. And on this show, that's why we present to you so many different perspectives, because we just want to introduce everybody to new alternatives that they may never have explored before, and to just kind of give you a softer approach, knowing that if you try these methods, nobody's going to try and convince you to join some
Right.
kind of cult or commune or anything like that, or new religion. It's not about that. It's truly about finding peace of mind within you and with one another.
We just kind of go by the theory. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you, and do not do to others what you would not have done to you. That's what it's all about. That's what being a spiritual person is all about,
Right.
really, in
The
a
golden
nutshell.
rule.
The golden rule, okay? So
Absolutely.
we hope that that will clear up any of your questions on that, and if you have any more questions about it, please don't hesitate to let us know. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sure we'll be hearing more questions
Oh,
on
yeah,
that
we'll be
matter.
having questions. We'll be answering them every week from now on. Every time we have a show, we will answer one of your questions for you, okay?
Okay, so tonight's guest, we have with us for our second time, Judy Martone Peluso.
Third.
And Judy has been in private practice for over 30 years. Her services include holistic psychotherapy, spiritual counseling, energy healing, shamanic practices, massage, and life ceremonies. Judy is an ordained minister of the Universal Life Church, and most recently has been sworn in as a Justice of the Peace for the state of Connecticut. She performs life ceremonies, weddings, child blessings, and memorial services. Judy brings to all her work a rich background in spirituality and social justice activism.
And the title of our show
Yeah,
tonight?
tonight's title of our show is it's Discrimination, a Spiritual Disease. I want to introduce Judy.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you,
Hi.
and welcome.
Thank you for being
to
here,
our show.
Judy.
Thank you
so
for asking
much.
me. Thank you.
So, first question right off the bat, kind of in the line of our title, is define for us what you mean by discrimination as a spiritual disease.
Well, let's see, I'll try to be as concise as possible. I think discrimination is part of the human condition. I think it's based on fear. And I think if we are going to grow spiritually, it's very important to be aware of the places inside of ourselves where we carry discrimination, where we need to have other people be less than ourselves. Whether it's based on color, gender, sexual preference, race. You know, it's been part of the human condition for so long, and I think that this is an especially important time to be discussing this issue, given this time of history when the first African-American president has been elected, Obama. Here in the state of Connecticut, that the law has been passed for gays and lesbians to marry. And I think that so many of us have come from cultures that experience discrimination, and yet we haven't learned to not pass that on. That somehow, I remember even as a child, I had a hard time understanding why just different nationalities, you know, who came to this country. My family was Italian, and they would tell stories about how they were discriminated against. And yet, I grew up hearing comments about black people. They didn't use that word then, you know. Certainly at that time we never even heard the word gay or lesbian, but I'm sure it would have been.
Oh, that was totally taboo then.
Yeah. And the same for other nationalities, for Asian people. Never even heard of Native American people.
Native American Indians,
Jewish people.
Yeah, I was going to say even some religions, and that's pretty much the point we want to make from the beginning of the show too, is that, you know, religions often discriminate. Not all, you know, hopefully we're becoming more open-minded, and that's happening less and less. But people grew up with religions, you know, that this was the only religion, and this was the God you should worship, and we can't accept any other. So that was set up right away. Now spirituality encompasses everyone. It never shuts out. It doesn't discriminate. So.
Right. Well, I think that as I was listening to you earlier, you know, in the program about talking about spirituality, you know, as you both know, I grew up in a very religious atmosphere, and I also entered the convent. So, and that journey is what brought me more in touch with spirituality.
Right.
And I've come to believe that religion ought to be a vehicle for those who find it helpful. That religion is there to help us to grow spiritually. Not everybody needs religion to grow spiritually. Some people do.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I think in a lot of our religions, we
Has the
humans
adverse
have,
effect,
well,
yes.
we humans have created God into our image, as opposed to
Yes.
recognizing
You're exactly right.
that whether you want to use the word God, Goddess, Great Spirit, but that being of love, you know, who I believe is within all of us.
Absolutely.
And if we are going to truly grow, then we have to take the risk of seeing that divine in other people.
In every single
Every
one.
single
Everyone,
one.
and
No
be willing to
exceptions.
look into ourselves, because it's pretty hard to grow up in this world and not have some discrimination inside. Not every one of us, to some degree, has some racism, has some anti-Semitism, homophobia. It's very hard to grow up in a culture that says if you're this, you're bad, you're evil, you're this, or whatever the words happen to be. And so it's important to continue to grow. I mean, obviously, some of us have it to a lesser degree than others. However, if we are going to bring peace to this planet, it has to begin with being willing to look at ourselves and be honest with ourselves. I have to admit, whenever someone says to me, I'm not racist, but or I'm not anti-Semitic, but you know, the Jewish people, you know, I'm not homophobic,
Yeah.
but, and whenever I hear that, it's like, okay. And usually
Yeah.
when people say that, they have no clue that they really are. And a lot of times we all shy away from speaking the truth. It's very hard to say to someone,
I still have these feelings, yeah.
Yeah, and
I
it's
still
also-
have this anger, or I still have this judgment.
and
That's
it's based
human,
on it's
because
based on
we
fear.
all trying to get through that judgment thing, like, you know, make a judgment. Even if someone cuts you off in traffic and you know, you whatever, bleep, bleep, bleep,
Yeah.
but you never know. They could be on their way to the hospital, or, you know, you quick make that judgment.
Right.
And you really don't know what's going on in their lives.
Yeah. And to have the courage to speak the truth to one another. You know, to be able to say, well, actually, that is anti-Semitic. Or, well, that is kind of racist. To be
Yes.
able to say that, not in a way of being mean or, as you said, judgmental, but saying as a way to help one another to grow. That when we find this in ourselves, to be able to speak it. You know, because so often people are afraid to say something. If a joke is made about, you know, a gay person, or a joke is made about a non-white person, or a person of another religion. I mean, look what went on in the campaign with Obama.
I know.
It was spoken as an insult that he was Muslim, which he is not. But nonetheless, why is that an insult?
Right.
You know, there's been this generalization that if someone is Muslim, therefore they're terrorists, and that's so wrong.
Yeah.
You know, and I think
Exactly.
it's time that we see one another as the human beings that we
We
are,
are first, yes.
and the fact that we're spirits who have come to have a human experience, and to help one
Yes.
another in this journey.
I know some people, someone will do something wrong in some race, something wrong by our eyes, and so we judge the whole race, and that's wrong.
Right,
That's
and there
exactly
is
right.
some truth to, the reason there are stereotypes is there is some truth to every stereotype, whether
Right.
one is Irish, Italian, African American, gay, lesbian. I'm sure I'm leaving people
yeah.
Jewish. You know, we all have
And we're
some
perpetuating,
commonalities.
I think we perpetuate those conflicts by having those judgments. If so many people are carrying those judgments around, that culture's going to be the ones to act it out for us. You know, it's like in a play, you know, so.
It is.
Yeah.
And we're all in a play, actually, and so when you think about it.
Yeah, I used
You
to
know?
think it's a big stage.
It is, yeah.
You know,
I think
this is a big
Shakespeare had it
stage.
right.
Yep.
You know, life is a stage.
Yeah.
On Saturday, I mean, one of the things I love in my work is performing ceremonies, and I had the privilege of performing a marriage for a same-sex couple, 2 women, and these women had been together for 33 years.
Wow.
And they have longed to be married from the get-go. Now, not everybody's interested in getting married. There are people actually who are opposed to the institution of marriage. That's fine. However, those who want to get married ought to be allowed to do so. It's based on love. You know, and we live in a world where love is so needed, and why should anyone
be denied?
These women, and there's so many others out there over the, up until recently I was doing civil unions, and just about all the civil unions I did were with couples, both men, gay men and lesbian women, who've been together a really long time. And it's interesting because it's a time in history where there's so much conversation about the frequency of divorce among heterosexual couples. And I'm not saying that there isn't, and there will be divorce among gay and lesbian couples. Of course there will be. However,
you've had to withstand so much of that, and then still get in front of people and
And I'll tell you, it was so moving on Saturday. I mean, these women were just so emotional about it, and it was so great to be able to be part of this celebration. I believe there were over 100 people there who were all supporting their life together and recognizing these women in their hearts have been married for 33 years, but only now is it considered legal, and that's sad. It's very sad, and some of the mean things that are said are just are uncalled for, and I think it's based on ignorance. I think it's based on fear, and to me, there are two things in life: love and fear.
That's all there are. Those are the only two emotions in life. Yep.
So
everything is fear-based or love-based.
Absolutely.
And when it comes to love, everything is either a giving of love or a cry for love, and that's it.
And I believe it was on Oprah recently that with Reverend Bacon. I don't know if you've heard this episode that he was saying that to come into this earthly experience as a homosexual is divine, because it's as if you've picked this life of challenge and to serve as a lesson and to serve as an example of love, and to come into an experience, if we do choose our experience here on earth, to come in knowing that you're going to be standing up against the fire every day.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
What
an amazing journey.
One of the things that I think people get angry about is they think that they choose to be that way, that it's not something that they're born with or in their bodies. When from our spiritual point of view, it is something they're born with. They came to be that way, to learn their lessons or to help others or whatever. It's a karmic type of a thing, which I use that on broad terms, which is just
a different kind of choice.
That's right, and that's it. But we're all brothers and sisters. We're all the same.
Right. We're all one.
That's it. And that's, from the spiritual point of view, that's what everyone should realize.
Yeah, and I think that's incredibly important. Yeah, I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way I do, which I am sick to death of people killing in the name of God.
Oh, yeah.
I really am. I mean, it's like, who is this God who is so hateful and so cruel?
Yep.
And that's where I think that we create God into the human image.
Right.
The whole idea of revenge, the idea of control. This is right, this is wrong.
I think they got that from the Bible, the Old Testament, where, they said he made sacrifices, but they don't realize that that's a history book. It was written by people with their own ideas.
And the New Testament as well.
And the New Testament
I believe a lot of it's written as a metaphor too. It's not necessarily this is bone dry.
Well, when you think about the Old Testament, New Testament, he was a vengeful God, animal sacrifices, people sacrifices. He's on our side on this war, he's on your side on that war. Then all of a sudden, the New Testament, when Christ came, he's a different God now. He's more loving, he's more this, he's more... How can that be? Common sense. How can that be? If most people would use common sense. He was loving since the beginning, when he created everything. So,
Or
yeah,
she,
you're
or
right.
she.
Or she, yeah.
Or actually, yeah, in a way, I
really
wish there were another
it
pronoun,
way of saying
because
that, yeah.
that's part of the problem that we have, is we try to compartmentalize God
Make it masculine or
to,
feminine,
right,
when
as
it is
opposed
all
to,
that is all energies.
That's
Yeah.
right. He is both,
Yeah.
or she. She is a he. It is a he. She. Yeah.
she.
He, she. I get upset when people say, like, when they have these wars and these things, and they say, God is on our side.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Even at a sports event, God is on our side. I don't think so. I mean, how can he be? If people just use common sense, you have to believe he can't like this side more than that side.
Right, it's not about sides.
No.
That's
It's
the
like
thing,
you said,
even in
it's-
sports, and I love sports.
I do too. It's a God
Some
that
sports.
we
UConn women's basketball, God's on our side, yes.
It's a God that we created. You're right. It's a one we created, who does all these things and feels all the and punishes and is vengeful and things like that.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's based on our idea of family, our idea of parenting. I mean, it is very complex, and yet at the same time, it's also very simple.
And I think it's interesting because we judge because, we know, I think, on some level that we are all of that, but we're afraid to admit it, that, okay, there is that aspect in me that is just like you, but I'm afraid of admitting that.
Well, it's like when someone, is mirroring something back to us,
Right.
we don't want to admit that that's what's happening. That a lot of times the very thing that annoys us in someone is something within ourselves that's being mirrored back that we don't want to look at. Not all the time, but a lot of times that's what it is. So we'd rather, either demonize that person or say, well, that person's this or that, as opposed to, okay, what is it in me that I'm seeing that I'd rather not see?
Yeah, exactly. When I like, I don't know, people can say what they want about this generation coming up behind, but I see a lot more, sexual freedom in terms of, just how they expressed themselves to one another now. Maybe some of that is drug related, I don't know, but I see like a more of an understanding with a younger crowd about, women really embracing women and men,
Men are embracing men more now, yeah.
and just, I don't know, sexual freedom or just a more comfortable level with the same sex. So
And
That's
hopefully
true.
also with different races. I mean, that's what's so important.
Becoming more and
it's
more
all
androgynous.
connected. I mean, we're all, every one of us is connected to one another. And we just said earlier, the golden rule: do unto others. The reality is, what we do to others, we are in fact doing to ourselves.
Yes.
And if there ever is going to be peace on our planet, it will be when we recognize that every time we participate in violence, we're helping to create violence at the same time.
Even within autoimmune diseases.
Absolutely.
That's why all these autoimmune diseases are floating around, which is basically a war within yourself against yourself. Now, if you're projecting that outward, it's happening inwardly as well.
Yeah, that, and
So-
and I think we're also experiencing the results of what's happening in our environment and the level of stress that people are living under, the air, the hormones in food, the preservatives. I do think that there are a lot of new illnesses coming as a way to teach people.
Absolutely.
It's like I think of it in terms of, they talk about the canary in the mines to find out if there's a leak in the mines, which unfortunately they would bring a canary down to see if the canary would live. Well, I think a lot of us, are the canaries, to say things have to change.
Yeah.
And these diseases are created by man and man's thoughts, the negative thinking and so forth, and then the things that they do with the environment. But they blame God.
Yeah, and I think it's a
That's
combination
another-
of a lot of things.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yes, it's a combination.
It is. I think it's everything coming together. And I also do think that illness sometimes is part of one's journey. That
Absolutely.
that it's like we can never judge the journey of another person. We have no right to do that.
Walked
You're
a
right.
mile in their moccasins, right?
Yeah,
Not even then. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And
but the amount of hurt that we create through discrimination, that's kind of, this has been a long answer to your original question. That's what the spiritual disease is. You know, the kind of hurt that we create through our own discrimination, whether it be racism, homophobia, I'm not getting the word out right tonight.
So you have that, I have yeehaw. What are we gonna do?
Right. But really, I mean, that the kind of hurt we create by sometimes what people think are harmless comments are not only hurting other people, but I think hurting ourselves and keeping us from growing spiritually. And I think we have to help each other to see the subtleties of it within ourselves, because sometimes it gets to a point where it's subtle, but it's still there.
No, it cracks me. I was just thinking, because like I have gone through issues with dealing with my intolerance of people who are intolerant. Like,
right,
you know
yeah,
what
right.
I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I can't be around that person because they're, you know, very discriminative or judgmental, and I'm like, and it gets me boiled up, you know. And I remember seeing a sign one day that said like fight intolerance, and I'm thinking, oh, I know that is not the answer. You know, it's like the opposite of what we need to do.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. I know, but it's.
Yeah, but that's why I noticed, you know, I have it too. If I can't sit next to that person who's making remarks and be loving and have loving thoughts to them, it's the same thing.
Well, and I think sometimes being loving is getting angry and using the anger in a constructive way. You know, I mean, I don't think loving is just how nice,
tolerating it.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes it does mean speaking out and being firm and knowing when to stop. You know, I was thinking, you know, talking about the wedding that I mentioned this weekend. There was an article written in one of the newspapers about it, and I was reading it, and then I read the comments that people wrote in. It was hard. Some of them were some of them were beautiful. But at least the day I read it, most of them were really mean-spirited and very ignorant. And I thought about writing a response, and then I just stepped back and thought, no, the kind of comments that I'm reading, a response really, there's nowhere to go with the response because it's so entrenched in ignorance and fear that it would only make it, you know, come up against each other, like banging heads together. You know, so some of it is knowing when to speak and when not to.
I agree with you there.
You know, there was that question, and what you had just said about loving the person, doing it in a loving way. Okay. And then someone explained it to me, and I thought, yes, that's true. It's very hard to love people. You say love them. Or when you get upset with them, you have to get upset with what they do, the act, not the person. Get upset with the comment, get upset with how they're acting, but not with the person.
Separate it from the person.
Separate it from the person.
Of that person is pure light.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's hard to see.
To separate it.
Yeah, it's not always easy to do that.
I know. And silence, you're right. Silence means consent. That's the model that I usually go by. Everybody says, I don't want to say anything, I don't want to get him mad. Well, if you come from an anger point with this person, they're going to retaliate. You're going to start. The fire starts building. But if you can explain it in a nice way, in a tolerant way.
Sometimes.
And then, if you can do it, but then if they come back at you with words which they usually they say 2 words when they don't, you know, then you let it drop.
Yeah, it's knowing when to back off.
You can drop these little pearls, so to speak, or these little hints, but other than that, you can't argue. You cannot argue with them because you're not going to get anywhere. So you're right about that. You have to say something once in a while. Because if you don't,
and sometimes, and to be careful not to participate in racist conversation or homophobic or anti-Semitic. It's so easy to be around that and not speak up or not say, well, I'm not comfortable with this line of conversation. Or as I said, you know, when someone says, well, I'm not this, but, and then make a comment, well, actually that is racist, or that is, you know. I mean, you don't have to say it quite in that way, but sometimes I think that's how it needs to be said. And I've said that in my work with people. You know, I mean, I do bring social justice into my work because I don't think that our growing is only based on family and environment. I do think we're affected by what goes on in society around us, and that it's important to have an awareness of how we are affected by our society. And so that's part and parcel of how I work with people, and to me that's part of growing spiritually. That we can't just ignore what goes on in our world and just say, oh, well, gee, I'm not going to do anything about that. In my little part
of the world, it's, protected and safe, I think you're absolutely right there. Now, Judy, I was wondering if you could explain for our viewers what a life ceremony is. Like, what do you incorporate into your ceremony?
I like calling them life ceremonies because there are times in people's lives when people kind of pause to focus on the moment, on the situation, whether it be a wedding. I was going to say civil union, but in Connecticut we don't have to worry about that anymore. So I could say wedding in general. Child blessing, whether it's an infant or a young child, to be able to welcome that child into the family of humans, into this onto planet Earth. Memorial service, obviously that speaks for themselves, to honor the person that has been here and to kind of help them to pass on and go home. And the way I do the ceremonies is I really customize them to the people. For example, when a couple contacts me if they want to be married, I meet with them first to get a sense of them and who they are, what they want in their ceremony, and then I send them through email a lot of suggestions, readings, suggestions of different ceremonies within the ceremony, always encouraging them that it is their ceremony. They don't have to accept anything I suggest, but it's a way to get them thinking. The same with child blessing, the same with a memorial service, to really bring it into the context of the people who are involved and to make it very personal and very individual. So, and I love doing them. It's so wonderful to be able to share these transition times with people, and they are transition times, whether it's a wedding, whether it's a child blessing, whether it's a memorial service.
Beautiful.
So it is a wonderful thing, and I think
it must be beautiful when you do a memorial service because of the spiritual beliefs and so forth.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's gotta be beautiful
and it's also sad.
Oh yeah.
And I helped to do a memorial service for a client of mine that I worked with for quite a while, who ultimately died from cancer. And I had, gotten to know her very well. So it was very sad. Wonderful, wonderful woman. And really lived through that illness. I mean, lived and learned, and, I learned so much in that process. So, and child blessing speaks for itself. I mean, my God, it's so cool.
Yeah,
it really is,
beautiful,
to be able to celebrate a child's life and to see that innocence, and to be able to, offer a time of celebration and a ritual to welcome that child into the immediate family and to the larger family of Earth. It's just wonderful.
What's nice about those kind of ceremonies is I'm not a big one on rehearsed prayer. Where you you say it without a meaning in your heart.
Right.
Yeah.
I've heard it so often. It's rushed, it's fast, and it's a rehearsed thing. It doesn't come from your heart. But those ceremonies that you do, they're from the heart. That's the difference we see between spiritual, again, and religion. It's a beautiful thing when you speak. It comes from your heart. It's different for everyone. The words are there for everyone. I went to one once, and I think it's beautiful. So beautiful.
Yeah, and when people are, it is about their life transition. So the more they participate in developing it, it has so much more meaning, not only for them, but for everybody who's involved in it. Like when I do weddings, I always make a point to tell the quotes guests that they're not there to be observers. They're there to participate. And to really take that seriously, because as we are celebrating the love between two people, it's a great time to remember love in your own life and to deepen that. And to realize you're here, by being here, you're also making a commitment to this couple to support their relationship and to be available should they need help down the road.
That's beautiful.
So,
That's true.
So it's, I love ritual. I mean, I think that's one of the things that, has really stayed with me through my experiences when I was Catholic, that, I mean, the ritual there
Because
was
it connects you.
Yeah, and I think in whatever we do, the more we can externalize it, which is what ritual is. It's externalizing our emotions, our transition, our lives. I often, when I do bereavement work with people, I encourage them, to develop small rituals around the person, whether it's a human person or an animal person, that close being that they've lost. It could be, I know when my dog Ginger died a good number of years ago now, it's hard to believe it's so long, but every month on the anniversary of her death, I would buy a rose and light a candle. And for me, that was my way of remembering, grieving, and honoring that life that was so precious to me and taught me so much. And there are different ways of doing. Sometimes, with a person on the anniversary, you have their favorite meal, or some people go to a cemetery, or you could write a letter to that person. You put their picture out, and light a candle or put some flowers there. I mean, there's so many different, it doesn't have to be complicated.
You know what I do? My son passed on almost 10 years ago, and every year on his birthday, I buy a helium-filled balloon, not too tight if it's a warm summer day because it was June, and I go out by my cousin's house because she lives in the country, and I tell him happy birthday, and I said, here, catch the balloon, and I send it up. I know that he's on a level of somewhere, some plane up in the sky, and I send the balloon, I let it go up to him, and I watch until it's gone, until I can't see it anymore, and I know he got it. And that's what I do every year, and he knows. I expect that when I pass over, he comes to greet me, he's going to have all his balloons in his hand.
Right, all his hands, right.
I just saw that vision. He's going to be holding a whole bunch of balloons,
Wow,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
So,
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's choosing symbols that have meaning for your relationship with that person. And that's what ritual is.
Adding that emotion to it. Absolutely.
I know. Getting back to the discrimination, I remember when I was watching the inauguration, it was wonderful that he was in a new presence and a new, he seems to have all these wonderful ideas. But what touched me the most was looking out at the audience when the camera panned out and seeing all races there, all different kinds of races, and everyone with the tears coming down their eyes.
It was incredible.
We were driving to
I
New
was
Jersey,
crying
my
at
mother
that.
and I. We were like sobbing in the car, tears coming down.
It's just
blowing our
gorgeous. It was
nose.
beautiful. It's true.
And
And the
I-
sea of people.
I know, and some people that we knew went there, young people, people in their like early 20s at a restaurant. They were telling us they were there 6 o'clock in the morning, and they said that people were so wonderful. They said people were shaking each other's hands and saying, how are you? They were polite. There was no fight. There was no police. There was nothing. Everybody was smiling. Everybody was happy. The way it should be all the time.
Yeah.
That's what touched my heart. I think, why can't
The
we
hope,
be this way?
because the people were filled with that hope.
That was
Yes.
it, what
The
hope
presence
does.
of hope and
Yes,
understanding.
and he's human. He's going to make mistakes. We're not always going to agree with what he chooses to do, but I believe that the man comes from his heart.
And if we can come together for that and be one, why can't we come together?
Well, it was a start,
Yeah.
and
I watched this in a laundromat. I had to do laundry, and I was sitting in the laundromat with a black lady who was running it, and another white man who sat with us. The three of us were watching, and I said to her, you know something? I said, this is a great victory for you because you're black, and because I had seen a History Channel, a thing on Martin Luther King, and saw, oh my God, what they did. I said, but you know what? It's even bigger for us.
absolutely.
Because here we're for the white people. I said because we voted for him. It shows that our prejudice in so many
That we're
hearts is
overcome,
gone. It's
yeah.
over. I said, that's
Well,
a
it's not
victory for
gone. I
us.
wish it
Not
were.
gone
It's
yet.
not
No, I
gone.
mean-
Getting there.
No,
But
I don't
it's
mean
a big
everyone.
change.
I mean in
Yeah.
in the people's hearts that were like, that did do this, their prejudice was gone. But there's still prejudice, so definitely. But I'm saying just the people who did it. So for those people, it was a great victory for us. That's what I meant. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's
She
like
said
what I'm
you're-
saying. It's
right.
it is when we're open and change, it's a victory for everybody. You know, and I do think that this election was very special, and I think it is a statement that we're growing, and we still have a ways to go. And
Oh, yeah.
you know, I mean, just even as women, you know,
I know.
we still don't get equal pay in the workplace. There's no equal rights amendment. I mean, it's pretty amazing when you think of it, you know, at this stage of history. You know, and speaking about discrimination, I left that out, you know, misogyny, the hatred of women, and the belief that women are less than.
I think
And
we're going to have
that's-
a big show on that in the future, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be really
Feminine
important.
divine, the rising
Yeah.
up of the feminine
Yeah.
divine, and how important it is for us to begin to embrace that energy, because it's a very different energy than the masculine, but equal.
But you need it for balance.
Yeah, you need
know,
it.
just like the men need to balance their own female side. You know, we all need that
Right.
balance. And I think for a lot of us, like myself, I was very involved in the feminist movement years ago. You know, we've been very disheartened in seeing how a lot of things have gone backwards, and a lot of young women, not all, but many young women have no clue that we still have a long way to go. They
And
figure
you-
it's all done, you know?
And I think, too, a lot of that movement, women had to become so much more masculine to be seen
Well,
as
to come-
equals.
also to come to the
when
balance.
They haven't, when, you know, is that really truly embracing your femininity as well? I mean, you know, to have to become, I don't know.
Well, I don't think it was so much becoming masculine as it was allowing that side to develop.
show. Yeah,
And
that's true.
sometimes I think we have, and you know, when we're changing, we go to an extreme before we
yeah,
come to
that's
balance. And I think for a lot of women over the centuries, really, being a victim has been the role. And so that we've needed to develop our more assertive side, to be able to be out in the world
Yeah.
and live as women out in the
Right.
world. You know, I mean, when you think of the amount of criticism there is for single moms who have to work, or just even when you do have a couple raising children, both parents have to work, there's still so much criticism around that. And it's like, what are they supposed to do? You know? And the criticism is always far more towards a woman. You know, so we have a ways to go, and that is part of discrimination, and it is finding that balance between the male and the female. And as you've said, the divine is both, not one or the other.
And that's our, you know, understand that, you know, this is an experience of duality, but there is no duality.
Yeah, on this planet there is.
Yep. Until we
So-
come to understand that it's not.
To dislike someone or to hate someone just because of their color or their or their beliefs or anything. When you think about it, common sense, if a person would just ask themselves, why do I hate this person? What is it? Did they do something to me?
Get to know them, right?
Make the list. Did they do something to me? What is the reason why I don't? What is it? Most of the time, it's fear. It's all fear-based. Those two emotions, love and fear, it's fear. And if you could face those fears and look at the reasons and open the mind and use the common sense, which is such a disease we have going around, lack of common sense.
Yeah, or
It's
even to just
awful.
spend more time with that person. And, you know, so much of that is dispelled once you get to know somebody beyond their
Exactly.
name,
But,
beyond like where are you from, you know. You know, and I think even, you know, if you run into angry people, I mean, just you might put up your defenses right away, but once you learn, like, you know, they had a rotten childhood, or you know, this, that, you
Or just a
grow
rotten
in
day.
compassion. You know, you just grow in compassion for them. So.
A lot of times, though,
Getting beyond
people
the hello.
don't know they hate. You know, that's the problem. A lot of times they don't know, and they would, if you were to say that, I don't hate anybody. No, I don't hate anybody. And unfortunately, you know, the discrimination that's based on religious beliefs as opposed to spiritual beliefs, it becomes even more threatening to challenge that. When people really believe that if they're being true to God, they therefore have to be opposed to this person.
Yeah.
And that's
You're right.
that's a tough one. It really is. It's one of the hardest
so
things.
Entrenched.
It is.
So entrenched.
And it's just people wanting to be good people, wanting to do the, quotes, right thing.
Get through those pearly gates.
Yeah. Going to be some big surprises.
There again, because they found a passage in the Bible that said that gay people, this is not what we do. But they didn't read the whole passage on it. They just take bits and pieces out of there and make it say what they want it to say. God is a God, like we said, who loves everyone. If we as parents could not condemn our children to eternal punishment, so to speak, to suffer for the rest of their lives, and we're human, how could a loving God who made us all condemn us to that? How could he? Would you want to be a part of that kind of God?
Why would that even be created in the first place?
Yeah.
Right. And why would we be created so different?
Yeah.
If that wasn't a blessing.
I read a little passage in the Course in Miracles, which I think is a wonderful course, a wonderful book, and it said, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Therein lies the peace of God. So, hate, fear, all those things are negative. They don't really exist. I used to say to myself years ago, what if the dream was the reality, and the reality was the dream?
And how do we know it's not?
That's right. That's
Maybe
right.
this is all one big
Probably
dream.
the way it's going.
Exactly.
Oh, I know.
So I want to know, what do we do to help our future generations along? I mean, I really think that, as adults, we're learning these lessons. Sometimes they're very hard lessons, and then we have to help the younger ones. What do we do? How do we do it?
I think it's happening. Yeah. It is happening, and I do think that, in my more hopeful moments, which thankfully this is a time in history where I feel incredibly hopeful, but even before this, the belief that as each of us change, so does the world. And I think we have to, do more than that. And some, their calling is to do, to be out there in public a whole lot. But for those of us, I think the way we are with friends, with family, clients, with ourselves, that as we are willing to grow and change and share that with others. And I think especially, like yourself, you have children, I mean, what a responsibility,
and, actually they teach you, because more often than not, they're saying, that doesn't sound right to me, and they're brave enough to say it, if they hear comments that are discriminatory or judgmental, they will actually say something, and I have to give this generation a lot of credit for speaking their mind.
Well, it also means that they're experiencing environments where they're encouraged to do so. Yeah. So it goes both ways. I mean, children who, are suppressed and are not encouraged to raise questions, to say what they're observing.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that there's so much more encouragement now. Plus, we have the internet.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's all there.
My goodness,
whatever you can see.
I mean, and like everything, it has its disadvantages as well. However, it is making the world a smaller place.
Yeah.
We can in a moment can communicate with somebody in another country.
Yeah.
On another continent. And the kids who are so into computers and are so into doing that, it's an amazing experience. The downside is that there's so much communication going on via computer with kids that you wonder about social skills as far as face-to-face communication.
Yep, there's the yin and the yang of everything.
It is,
right?
but
And I find it interesting. I mean, we took our children to a town which was, there was a lot of homosexuality there, and I loved that they didn't even notice. And I thought, like, wow, we must be doing something right, because when I was young, it was, there was so much discrimination over homosexuality, and I was around those messages all the time, that when I'd see that growing up, I was like, that's different, or, question it and wonder, and to just see my kids not even thinking anything about men hugging on the street side and women kissing. That I just felt
as it
so
should be. Yeah, isn't that wonderful? It is,
that.
and that's what I mean. It is happening. The change is happening, and and there's always going to be room for change. We're not going to arrive at a utopia, because our planet is a place to learn.
Change is never. I mean, we'll never cease as long as we're evolving.
Yeah,
we'll never cease changing.
But the important thing is that we're willing to help each other change, raise the questions, look within ourselves, and not judge ourselves. When we see our own little places of racism, homophobia,
just send love to that. Get quiet and send love to that.
That sometimes, when we see that, we get so scared. It's like, especially those of us who are more aware. It's this judge. Oh my God, how could I be thinking that, or how this and that? It's like, welcome to the human race.
And it's funny, because I see as the clients that I have coming in, they're growing in their awareness, and there's always that period of like high anxiety, because they're so ultra aware of their thinking, and then they're like, I'm bad because I'm thinking this, and I tell them it's a process. Of course those thoughts aren't going to go away overnight. You just need to
send them love. And a lot of them aren't going to go away. So what's your thoughts? We do have an ego.
Yes.
And our mind does what a mind's supposed to do, which is sometimes yap, and it's learning to make peace with that, and learning how to quiet it, and at the same time learn from it when it's doing its thing, and that's, I think that's I know for myself, it's one of the hardest things, to be willing to accept myself. And a lot of times I don't even know that I'm judging myself. I'm so used to it, and a friend will say, you're being hard on yourself. And sometimes it's like, I am? It's such a way of life sometimes. I mean, I've certainly, over the years, changed enormously. It's still there, though, And that's the thing, to be willing to step back and go, oh, okay, what can I learn from this? This doesn't mean I'm a bad person. I'm just a human person. I'm here to learn.
When you're saying about us being alike, in addition to the Reiki, I do spiritual counseling. And as I talk to my clients, and I listen to their stories and listen to their feelings, and like you were saying, Traci, I say, wow, we're alike. She's going through what I went through. And when I said to the person, well, when I went through that, and I have these feelings, she goes, you're going through that. She said, you're so there together. I thought you were there. I thought you got. I said, oh no. I said, battles come for the rest of your life. I said, how do you think I can understand what you're going through and help you?
Because if I had an experience.
Right, I went through it. I cannot help someone to learn something I never went through. And so as I say, wow, we are all the same, because we're going through these things in different levels,
and I'll
in
see
different
that
ways.
too. Like, I'll just get through like one particular struggle or difficulty in my life, and I'll just get through it, and then someone knocks on my door and it's someone with that same.
Isn't it amazing?
It's like, wow, like, okay, I was just prepared for this.
Yeah, right.
Exactly, me too. That's happened. Yes, it's wonderful.
I find that always happens. Oh, it does. I know.
That we're all going through these battles. Every single one of us.
We're far more alike than different. We really are. The circumstances of what we're learning may be different, but the lessons are so often very similar. And I think that, and isn't that what we're talking about here? That discrimination keeps us from recognizing. We're so afraid of differences, We
are.
And if we can recognize, it doesn't matter what color our skin is, it doesn't matter what our gender is, it doesn't matter what our sexual preference is, it doesn't matter, what our nationality is, that ultimately we're all in this together,
right?
And beneath the skin.
I like what Bernie Siegel always says that in his lectures. All our hearts look the same shape,
and the
muscle,
blood is
same
red
color,
in everybody.
That's right.
It's it's really quite simple, but we've made it so complicated,
We have.
And to me, for many years now, I've really believed that war is the ultimate expression of fear. That it's all when all the fears come together and just literally explode.
Right.
And it's time, I believe, that we find other ways, both within our personal lives and in the global life, to be able to deal with differences and disagreements without having to hurt and kill
Hurt
people.
one another.
Like it said, no one ever wins a war.
Exactly.
There's no winning.
Right.
Who's the good guy?
Right.
Well, it
I
depends
really
on the
think we'll
side
get to
you're
that
on.
point where, like,
People
won't show up for war. I mean,
Wouldn't
the
that be
youth
nice?
today,
Yeah, that would
do
be
you
so
see,
great.
The younger generation, they don't want to fight,
Yeah.
And what a wonderful thing.
And to me, it's just appalling that we send young people to war. I mean, at a time in their
Brainwash them,
lives
yes.
when so much change is happening, and to be put in that kind of experience and taught to kill, and then ignoring what happens when they come home.
Right. Post-traumatic.
Oh, it's just, so yeah, hopefully. Yeah, I remember back in the days of the Vietnam War, it would be like, what if somebody gave a war and no one
showed up.
Yes, no one showed up.
And
Maybe that'll be the case.
I hope so.
That's true. And there are no good guys or bad guys. The good guy is the side you're on, as far as
Right.
people are concerned. Just like on a car. If you're driving on a car in the road and you're going down the highway, and you're coming up where the people are coming onto the highway, and somebody's cutting you off. He's a bad guy. I'm a good guy. I'm going
Right.
straight. But if you're in the other car, you're the one coming out on the highway, and the other person won't let you by. Well, they're the bad guy, but you're the good guy. You're
Right.
coming out. It's just wherever you are.
Yeah.
And when we stop to realize that we all have the same experiences, there are no good guys and bad guys.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it.
Well, Judy, it's been wonderful, as
Thank you.
usual, having you on the show. And I'm sure we're going to have you on again in the future.
I'll be
And
happy
it's
to
been
come
very
back.
interesting, and I'm
Gets me
anyway.
thinking too. I'm really, when we decided to do this, it was like, okay, how do I want to express this? Because I do feel very deeply about
Yes.
this whole issue, and I think I came into this world with it because from the time I was a kid, I used to say things to my father about comments he would make,
Yep. Me
and
too.
so it's like.
Yep.
And thankfully, he didn't get mad at me for doing it.
All right.
Keep it going.
Well, okay, we're going to give your information now to our audience in case anyone wants to get in touch with you. If you want to get in touch with Judy, her website is www.judypeluso.com, and her phone number is area code 203-468-1600.
And if you'd like to get in touch with us regarding this show, you can email us your questions. We'll put that information up for you. To contact us, you can call Rosemary at 203-627-7966, or Traci, myself, at 203-232-3405. And we're going to try to get that website up there for you. Okay, email your questions to healoutsidethebox@yahoo.com. Again, we're going to be having on our format time to answer those questions. And for show schedules, you can visit either of our websites, www.rosemarylachance.com or www.entirebeing.com. And I'm going to leave you with a quote, as we always do.
Okay, our quote for tonight from the Book of Courage is, "Do not cry out for justice, because justice means that we essentially want something bad to happen to another person because something bad has happened to us. But God is love, and love does not punish nor want anything bad to happen to anyone. The actual truth never requires forgiveness."
Great.
Well,
We want to say thank you.
Judy, thank you so much for coming. It was
Thank you.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining
Thank
us.
you.
See you next time.